static cling from your clothes dryer.
Yeah, we're going way beyond that.
We really are. We're plunging into the really complex world of advanced electrostatics.
Thinking about the forces shaping things at the nanoscale, driving processes inside our cells.
And even powering some next-gen tech. It's pretty fundamental stuff.
Absolutely. We've been looking at some really fascinating research that goes much deeper than just Coulomb's law, the basic attraction and repulsion.
Right. So we're going to unpack how these complex electrostatic interactions let tiny particles basically build themselves.
Assembly, yeah. And how they control the electrical side of our cell membranes.
And also underpin some really cutting-edge devices we're starting to see.
Exactly.
So our mission today is basically to pull out the most important and maybe the most surprising bits from the forefront of electrostatics research.
Sounds good. Where should we start? Modern understanding.
Yeah, let's start there. How our grasp of these fundamental interactions has gotten, well, deeper.
Well, one big leap is in modeling these forces, especially between objects that aren't just simple charges but are polarizable. They react to electric fields.
Polarizable, meaning their own charges can shift around in response to a field.
Precisely. And understanding that has been totally key to figuring out electrostatic self-assembly.
Self-assembly. That idea that tiny bits can just spontaneously organize themselves into bigger structures sounds almost like magic.
It does seem like it, but it's pure physics. Basically, these little components, they have electrostatic attraction pulling them together.
Yeah, makes sense so far.
And this is really critical, there's a sort of minimum strength needed, a minimum surface charge on the particles.
The threshold.
Yeah, exactly. Below that threshold, the liquid they're floating in, the solvent, it can actually disrupt the attraction. It shields the charges too much.
So the solvent isn't just a passive background, it's an active player.
Totally. It can either help or hinder the whole process. It's this delicate balance.
That changes things. And I guess this is super important when you're trying to build things at the nanoscale, right?
Oh, absolutely. Electrostatic deposition is a really powerful tool for assembling nanoscale materials with amazing precision.
Like a super controlled spray painting.
Kind of, yeah. You have charged nanoparticles and a charged surface, and zap, they stick where you want them. But again, the solvent choice is absolutely vital.
Right. Get it wrong and nothing happens.
Or worse, it happens badly. The right solvent makes it super efficient. The wrong one can kill it. It all depends on the particles, the surface, and the solvent, that whole system.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. From the tiny things we build to the tiny things inside us, our cells.
Right, the biological side.
I was really struck by the idea that different compartments inside a cell, the organelles, they actually have their own distinct electrical charges on their surfaces.
Yeah, it's like they have unique electrical IDs, and it's a really active research area.
It's not just random static then.
Not at all. It comes directly from the specific mix of lipids, fatty molecules that make up each membrane. Different lipids, different charge characteristics.
And some are more charged than others.
Definitely.
Yeah.
The inner side of the main cell boundary, the plasma membrane, that's the most negative. We're talking around minus 25 millivolts, which is significant at that scale.
Minus 35 millivolts. Wow.
Yeah. And others like the Golgi, lysosomes, the ER, they're also negative, just usually a bit less so.
So you could, in theory, target drugs just based on that electrical signature.
That's one of the exciting possibilities people are exploring, yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine that level of precision.
And these aren't just static charges sitting there, are they? They have, like, functional roles.
Oh, absolutely. They're dynamic. And recent work is digging into the electromechanical side of things, how the electrical forces affect the physical membrane.
Electromechanical, so electricity influencing mechanics.
Exactly. The electrostatic forces right at the membrane surface, they influence its physical properties, its stiffness, its shape, how stable it is.
So the charge helps determine the structure.
In part, yes. Think of it like tiny electrical forces acting as microscopic springs or levers, adjusting the membrane's physical state.
And this links directly to things like nerve signals. That seems like a huge leap.
It is. But remember, nerve signals are fundamentally electrical events involving rapid changes across the membrane.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the action potential.
Right. So understanding how the underlying electrostatic environment affects the membrane's mechanics, well, it gives us a much deeper picture of how those signals actually propagate, how the whole system works together.
That's fascinating. It connects the electrical and the physical right at the cell surface. Okay, let's look forward a bit. Where might all this lead in terms of, say, industrial applications?
Well, if you connect these basic ideas to technology, you see huge potential. The research points heavily towards MEMS.
Microelectromechanical systems. Tiny machines on chips.
Exactly. Electrostatics is often the engine, driving movement or sensing in these tiny devices. Biotechnology is another massive area.
How
Controlling cells, sorting molecules, diagnostics, and manipulating ultrafine particles for creating new materials with specific properties.
Right, like the self-assembly we talked about.
Precisely. And even space technology. People are looking at using electric fields for propulsion.
Electric propulsion, like ion drives.
Sort of along those lines, yeah. But maybe even more advanced concepts, using fields to push spacecraft without traditional chemical rockets. It's still early days, but potentially revolutionary.
Wow, okay, that's pretty far out. What about more down-to-earth problems being tackled now?
Closer to home, yeah, there are very practical challenges, like understanding electrostatic friction in touch screens and displays.
To make them last longer and work better.
Exactly. Or looking at why the insulation fails in certain types of electric motors, the inverter-fed ones, improving reliability and efficiency there.
Okay, so motor tech. What else?
And also refining how we measure the properties, the dielectric properties, of materials used in things like waveguides.
Waveguides for high-speed data, like fiber optics.
Or microwave communications, yeah. Getting those material parameters right is crucial for performance.
So it really runs the gamut, from our phones to industrial motors to communications. And flipping back to the biological side, what are the next big hurdles in research there? What do we need?
That's a great question. A big need is for better tools, more dynamic methods.
Dynamic, meaning seeing things change over time.
Yes, and with much higher resolution. We need to actually watch the electrostatic properties of cell membranes changing in real time.
During what kind of processes?
During really crucial stuff, like phagocytosis, when a cell engulfs something large, or macropinocytosis, which is similar, or during complex cell signaling events.
So not just taking static snapshots, but watching the electrical movie of the cell.
That's a good way to put it. Imagine seeing the electrical landscape shift and change as a cell responds to its environment or performs a function. That's the goal.
That sounds incredibly powerful. Okay, let's maybe dig into a couple of the more advanced physical ideas behind some of this. Electrostatic screening comes up a lot in biology. What is that exactly?
Right, screening. Okay, so imagine you have a charged molecule inside a cell. In a vacuum, its electric field would stretch out quite far.
Like a textbook diagram.
Yeah, but a cell is packed. It's full of water molecules, which are polar, and lots of ions, positive and negative charges floating around.
A very crowded, electrically noisy environment.
Extremely. And all those other charges react to the field of our original molecule. Opposite charges are attracted, like charges are pushed away.
So they cluster around it, in a sense.
Effectively, yes. They rearrange themselves, and this rearrangement creates its own electric field that opposes the original one. It cancels part of it out.
Ah, so they screen or shield the original charge.
That's exactly it. It dilutes the force, reduces its strength and its range. The Coulomb interaction doesn't reach as far or feel as strong because of all the other charges getting in the way.
Okay, so the busy cellular environment naturally dampens long-range electrostatic effects. That makes sense. Now, what about the dielectric barrier? That sounds important for membranes.
Hugely important. It relates to how well different materials permit an electric field to pass through them. This is measured by the dielectric constant.
Right, some materials block fields more than others.
Exactly. Water, which is most of the cell interior and exterior, has a high dielectric constant. It's very good at reducing electric field strength. Lots of polar molecules that can rotate and counter the field.
Okay, and the membrane.
A membrane lipid bilayer. Very low dielectric constant. It's mostly nonpolar hydrocarbon chains. It doesn't screen electric fields well at all.
So you have this stark difference, high dielectric outside and inside, low dielectric in the membrane itself.
Precisely. And that difference creates an energy barrier. For an ion, a charged particle, it takes a lot of energy to move from the watery high dielectric environment into the oily low dielectric membrane.
It's like trying to push a magnet through something that really resists its field.
That's a decent analogy. It's energetically unfavorable. And that barrier is a key reason why ions don't just leak across cell membranes willy-nilly.
It helps maintain the charge separation, the gradients that are essential for life.
Absolutely. It explains the membrane's low permeability to small ions.
And this relates to polarizability too, right? Permittivity.
Yeah, permittivity and relative permittivity, the dielectric constant, quantify this effect. They describe how easily a material's charges can be shifted or polarized by an external electric field. High permittivity means it polarizes easily and screens the field well. Low permittivity, like the membrane, means it doesn't.
Got it. Okay, one last specific phenomenon, the pull-in effect in MEMS and NEMS devices. What's going on there?
Right, pull-in instability. So picture a tiny movable part, like a microscopic cantilever beam, suspended above a fixed electrode plate.
Okay, like a tiny diving board.
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, you apply a voltage between the beam and the plate. What happens?
Electrostatic attraction pulls the beam down towards the plate.
Exactly. And the more voltage you apply, the stronger that pull becomes.
Makes sense.
But the beam also has its own mechanical stiffness, trying to spring back. At low voltages, the stiffness wins. It just bends a bit. But as you increase the voltage, the electrostatic force increases faster than the restoring spring force.
Uh-oh.
Oh, that's right. At a certain critical voltage, the electrostatic attraction suddenly overwhelms the mechanical stiffness, and the beam just snaps down, pulls in, and makes contact with the electrode below. It's an abrupt, nonlinear event.
A sudden collapse. How is that useful? Seems like something you'd want to avoid.
Sometimes you do,
Yeah.
but other times you harness it. That sudden snap is very detectable, so you can use it as a sensor mechanism.
How?
Well, imagine an accelerometer, like in your phone. If the device experiences acceleration, it might change the gap slightly, which changes the pull-in voltage. Detecting that change tells you about the acceleration.
Ah, so the instability becomes the sensing principle.
Precisely. And it's also used to make actuators. You apply the voltage, cause the pull-in, and that movement does work. Flips a microswitch, moves a micromirror, whatever you need. Small voltage, big mechanical effect at that scale.
So you can leverage that instability. Very clever.
It's a core principle in a lot of MEMS and NEMS devices, yeah. Switches, valves, resonator sensors.
Okay, so wrapping this all up then, this deep dive really shows, I think, that electrostatics is so much more than just static cling. It's this incredibly dynamic, complex field.
Absolutely. It's fundamental, shaping matter from the nanoscale up, running processes in our cells.
And driving technology. And it's not just electrostatics in isolation, is it? It's the interplay. Electrostatics with mechanics, with chemistry, with the environment.
That's where so much of the richness is. The electromechanics of membranes, the solvent effects in self-assembly, the pull-in instability. It's all about that interplay.
We've seen how these, sometimes subtle forces guide nanoparticles to build structures.
Dictate the electrical personality and physical behavior of our cell membranes.
And form the basis for tiny sensors and actuators that are all around us now.
It really highlights how central electrostatics is, even when we don't consciously think about it.
So for you listening, maybe the takeaway is to just consider, as you go about your day, how these invisible forces might be humming away in your phone's accelerometer, in the sophisticated dance of molecules within your cells.
Right. Even if you can't see it, these electrostatic interactions are constantly at play, enabling technology and, well, enabling life itself.
Maybe something we touched on sparked your curiosity, the self-assembly, the membrane potentials, the MEMS devices. Definitely worth digging deeper if it did. Thanks for joining us for this exploration into advanced electrostatics.